So we'll do some logical functions, and we're going to do some nested if. Here's your if error that we're going to run through. We're going to do an and and or operation. And there's a lot of here in the grayed out areas. We're going to look at a SumIF function, CountIF, and then there's several other in the gray areas. And then I went through several examples. Now these examples down here are what we're going to be covering in a minute, but there's a lot of real step-by-step example. Here is a thing that's talking about the CountIF function, and I went through and I create some formulas using the CountIF function. There's a SumIF, AverageIF. A little further down, I have some more exercises. Here's the logical if function, logical if file, and then we go through step-by-step exercise of how to actually build this out. This is the actual example we're going to do right now. But keep in mind in the book, there's step-by-step exercises that walk you through them. If you want to learn more about it, there's some additional practice exercises. So we're going to open up a file called logical if. We're going to go File, Open, Browse. We're going to come down to the file that says logical if. Open that up. Okay, on this particular sheet, we're going to look at this bonus sheet here. What we have is we have some cells. We have some bonuses that we're going to give them. And these are called withholdings. So this means that if they receive a bonus, we want to withhold if they have a certain status. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's start with our bonus. So what we want to do is we want to be able to give these salespeople a bonus if they meet the criteria. And the criteria is that they have a quota they have to meet. If they did not meet their quota, then they simply do not get a bonus. If they've met their quota, this person met their quota, exceeded the quota by $500, then they're going to get a bonus. Let's make this very simple right now and just put a bonus amount in. Okay, so if I come over to this bonus number here, and I do my if statement, let me type in the actual format for it. So you put the word if, and then you put in the condition, and then you put in the true and the false. And close it. So essentially, this is the format for it. You're going to put a logical condition in here. If that logical condition is true, then we're going to do whatever we state right there. If that logical condition is false, then we're going to do whatever it states there. So it allows us to have two possible answers. The conditions are going to use characters like a greater than character, a less than character, a greater than equal to, a less than equal to. You also have an equal to character, and there's one more that we use, which is a not equal to. If this is not equal to this, then it's true. So down here in the bonus, we're going to do our if statement. Equals if E5 is greater than F5, comma. That's either true or false. So if E5 is greater than F5, then that means they exceeded their quota. And we're going to give them a bonus. Let's give them a $500 bonus. Now, if it's not true, then we're going to give them 0 for the bonus. And we can close that off. If this is true, then we're going to give them a $500 bonus. If it's false, then we're going to give them 0. So this allows Excel to make decisions about your data. You turn on that, you fill it down. You see that it gives me a few people got a $500 bonus. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with salespeople. Maybe some of you are in sales, I'm not sure. But salespeople are unique. They really are into bonuses and this kind of thing. And currently what we have is a problem because Norris is mad that he got a $500 bonus. Now, why should Norris be so mad for getting a bonus? Shouldn't he be happy? Well, look what happened to Norris. Look at his numbers. He was like $34,000 over his quota. This person was only $500, and they got a $500 bonus. So Norris is not happy about that. He said, I deserve more. I made more. I deserve more. That's what salespeople think, right? So these things are never as easy as we want them to be. They always get more complicated. So we can't give them a $500 bonus anymore because we've got this problem. So let's give them a percentage, like 10% over their bonus. Now this is where a lot of syntax issue comes in. So we've got to make sure that we have the right parentheses and at the right spot and all this other. If one thing's out of place, it won't work. So I'm going to get rid of that 500 and I'm going to put an open parenthesis. And I'm going to simply say that if E5 minus F5 and close parenthesis. So if E5 minus F5, that tells me how much over their bonus they went. And then I'm going to multiply that with a star 0.10. So I'm going to add this in here instead of the 500. I'm going to replace that with parenthesis, E5 minus F5, close parenthesis, and then a star for the times 0.10. So that's going to give them 10% over their quota. And I can return on that to see if I'm going to have any different answers. Sure enough, I got some different numbers. Now, Brown is not very happy about that. He only got a $50 bonus. He just lost $450. But Norris is happy. I'm not too worried about Brown. He's got to make more money. How's that sound? That's the answer. You make more money, we'll give you more money, right? So that's kind of what we do with logic. We're making a decision about these things. Now, let me clarify this a little bit more. I don't really need to do this for 6 people. I can do that off the top of my head. But what if I had 50 or 100? You see, the chances of me making a mistake is going to go up. I can look at these numbers and tell you who gets a bonus, who doesn't get a bonus, you see, without really needing a formula. So the idea of that is, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And if you have a lot of values and you want to do it all mathematically, then let the system make the decision. Now, technically, I'm a lazy person. I personally feel that if I can get Excel to do everything, I would prefer that. So in other words, the less I have to do, the better. So I try to get Excel to do all the work, and I can do less work. So hopefully everybody got that all right. Now here we've got let's call it withholding. Now what we're doing this is we don't want to give them the money. We don't want to give them their bonus because if they're a brand new employee, we don't know if they're going to leave tomorrow. And so we don't want to pay them if the customer hasn't paid yet. But somebody who's been around for a long time, then we're going to give them the full amount. So we're going to withhold portions of their paycheck based on their status. So I want to put in here the percentage of withholding we're going to apply to this. We could do a math operation too, but I have to check each one of these statuses here. Unfortunately, there's 3 of them, not 2. So that's why it's called a nested if statement. So we're going to say equals if what? If the status, which is I5, is equal to 1. Now that's either true or false, right? If that's true, then how much we want to withhold from their paycheck. We're going to look at withholding, the little table next to it, and we're going to put a double quote, 0%, double quote. I'm treating this as a text string, so you got to make sure you put the double quotes around there. You're going to look for commas, double quotes, and close parentheses. Comma. Now this is the truth. This is your condition. This is your true. Now we're going to do the false. But the false, we still have 2 more things to analyze. So I'll put another if statement for the false. If what? If the status is equal to 2. Now that's either true or false. Now if that's true, then we want to put in 50%. We're going to withhold 50%. So double quote, 50%, double quote, comma. Now, if it's not 1 and it's not 2, then there's really only one answer left. So I'll default it to double quote 100%, double quote, and then we have to close it with 2 parentheses because the first parenthesis closes the red one and the second parenthesis closes the first one. And so that's essentially what, so it's a nested if statement. It's an if within an if. So let's get a hypothetical example. So you've got a database and you've got a job type. The job type is 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Job type 1 is a full-time employee. Job type 2 is a part-time. Job type 3 is intern. And job type 4 is whatever. So you can write an if statement and say the biggest question is when everybody sees the database, they forget what the 1s, 2s, and 3s mean. You don't want them to misinterpret that. So I can write a nested if statement to simply say, well, if it's 1, then that's a full-time employee. And I can put a field next to it and actually describe what the 1s and the 2s mean from a formula perspective. And that way it reduces that confusion. So anything you're looking for, you're trying to make a decision about, you can do an if within an if within an if. Now in the 2003 Excel, the maximum number of nested ifs was 7. In this product, the maximum number is 64. So I can do 64 ifs within ifs within ifs within ifs. I think you'd probably go crazy before you finished it. I've done up to 10 before, but I don't think I'll ever 64. All right, so we hit return on that. It gave me my 50% there. Now, the biggest problem here is syntax issues, okay? So if you have a syntax problem, you want to go back to your formula and make sure your commas are in the right place, that your double quotes are around each text string, and you have commas in the right place and parentheses in the right place and double quotes. So if you have a double quote that's not listed, which is probably a common one that people miss, so go back to your formula if you had an error and look at it very carefully to see if you can do that. Go to the next tab, the quota tab. Now, this is a common problem that occurs. We have this error message down here. See these errors? And these are typical. So if I put in some numbers up here, the error message goes away. But if I delete my numbers out of here, then it gives me an error message. It's doing an average of those cells, but if there's nothing there, it doesn't give you the average, it gives you an error. And that's because you're dividing by 0. So there's nothing to divide by. Your denominator is 0 divided by however many cells you have. And as a result of that, it gives you an error. So these errors do occur from time to time, and they're kind of annoying. But they're not, in this case, it really doesn't make a difference. So you take this sheet into your boss, and your boss takes a look at it and says, first thing they say is, well, how come you have an error on your sheet? And you explain to your boss, it's not an error. It's just a division by 0 problem. As soon as you give me the numbers, I'll punch them in, and the error will go away. Oh, okay, that's great. And then somebody walks in your boss's office and says, hey, look, you got an error on your sheet. And you go, it's not an error. It's just a division by 0. And then somebody else comments. That's about the time you're going to remember what we're going to talk about right now. It's called an if error. So the if error has an input, which is the formula, comma, and then you have to say, what do you want to appear there instead of that? I call this alternate text. So in other words, if this produces an error message, don't list the error message, put this instead. So I can come down to this formula here, and in front of the A, after the equal, we're going to say if error, and this is something that you may not remember this function, but you're going to remember it when you need it. Okay. Put a comma here, and then we say, okay, I'm going to plug the average function as the formula. And then I can say, well, what do I want to appear there? What would you like to appear there? We can put a blank, a 0, some information. I'll just put a 0. So see, I just want 0 to appear. I really don't want an error to appear there. Just put a 0 there if there's no data up above. So you say if error, open parentheses, average, stick your average in there, comma, 0, close parentheses. And there's my error. See? I'm going to fill that to the right. If I punch some numbers in here, you can see that it gives me the average. But if there's no numbers, then it comes back and doesn't give me the error message. Now this one here, I'm going to put in something different. I'm going to say the word double quote, no data. So I'm actually going to put an actual statement that explains why we're not getting the answer, because there's no data in there. On this one here, I'm going to put in a double quote, which simply puts in a blank field in that empty cell. So here I says no data. If I type in some data in here, you can see that it produces the average. But if there's no data in there, then it doesn't produce the error. It puts in the word no data. So you can put whatever you want for the result. This is a blank here. Whatever you want for the result. When are you going to remember this? When you need it. When you're getting these error messages and you know that's not a real error, it's just an annoyance issue, then you can actually go through and maybe research this a little bit more. And so I do talk about this in the courseware, and I do talk about it in several places. But it is in this particular chapter where I do mention it. So right here. There's the IFError right there. This is sort of like an information function because I kind of categorize it as a different function. It's really not. It's more of a logical function, but I categorize it as an information function because it's providing us information. It's not really doing anything. It's just looking at the cell and giving us information. The formula you build around it is actually doing something, but that's why I categorize an information. There's a lot of information functions that we can use. There's that. Now let's take a look at a couple more. There's a next section. This is called an and and or operation. So in this one here, go to the next sheet. And as you go through these formulas, you can go through and save these off if you like. If you save them off, be sure and save them off as a different name, say completed or something, and that way you have some sort of reference to go back to. But then you have the original to actually open up and try it again. Okay, we're going to go to raises here, and we're going to do a raise and an award. So we're going to start, this is going to be an and operation, and this is an or operation. So in other words, what I'm saying is for an and operation, two things have to be true. They have to get a bonus. In order to get a raise, you have to make money. If you're a salesperson and you don't make money, then you don't deserve a raise. You also have to be around for a while. This doesn't make fair to have a brand new employee get a raise when you've been around for a year. So you have to have a status of 1, and you have to make money. So this person has a status of 1, but they didn't make any money, so they're not going to get a raise. These people are the wrong status. This one here is a status of 1, so that's true. And then they also made money, so that's true. There's two things true. So they will get a raise. So we're going to come in here, we're going to write the and function, and we're going to add these two logical statements in there. So equals A and D with a parenthesis. Now we're going to put our two parameters in there. We're going to say the status is going to have to be equal to 1, and the bonus has to be greater than 0. And that's essentially what I'm putting in. I'm saying that equals and if C6 is equal to 1. That means they're a full-time employee. And B6 has got to be greater than 0. That means they made money. If those two are true, then the statement is true. Return, and there's my false. Now, you might not like this false and true statement because you think, does that mean they got a raise or that mean they didn't get a raise? Or what does this true mean? So you may not be totally on board with this true and false statement here. So let's stick a if statement around this logical result and say yes or no. So we come into the formula. In front of the A, we're going to say if with a parenthesis. Now, the AND operation is the logical statement, and that's going to produce a true or false result. If I click here and I say, okay, if that's true, then what do we want to say? Double quote, yes, double quote, comma, double quote, no, double quote. Now our formulas are getting a little complicated here, so we need to start putting our parenthesis in to close off this parenthesis. So you're plugging the AND operation right inside the if statement that says if the AND is true, then we want to say yes and no. We don't want to say true and false. Enter on that, double quote, and now we have a yes and no result. Now on the award, it's the exact same criteria, except we want to give them an award. We want to reward them for good work done. So if they've brand new employee and they make money, I still want to give them an award. If they've been around for a year, I will give them an award just for hanging in there. So we can say equals or, so either or is true. If the status is equal to 1 or the bonus is greater than 0. If either one of this is true, then they're going to get an award. So sometimes we use the AND. Most people use the AND operation more than the OR, but there are situations where you would use the OR too. So it looks like we're seeing who is going to get an award. Looks like a couple of people got an award. A couple of people did not because they didn't meet the two criteria that we were looking for. And then, of course, if you want to plug in the if statement around that, you're welcome to do that too. Let's go to example 1 and let's do another if statement, just casually kind of doing some ifs. We'll just do this first one and we'll do some others, but it's kind of very same logic. So if their total is greater than a certain amount, then we're going to give them free shipping. So let's put a number here. Let's say maybe 80,000 or something like that, or maybe, how about, yeah, we'll say 80,000. If they purchased over 80,000, then what is this? This is a customer sales sheet. Yeah. So if they have this number is over 80,000, then we're going to give them free shipping. So we're going to say equals if what? Try to think through it a little bit and what you're looking for. If the G5 is greater than 70 or 80,000. Now we don't put commas in here because Excel could get confused with the fact that is that a comma for the number or is that a comma to go to the next parameter? In this case, so we don't usually put the commas inside the 80,000, and that's either true or false. If that's true, that it is greater than 80,000, then we want to give them free shipping. Oh, so I can say yes. Yes, they're going to get free shipping. If it's not true, then we're going to say no, we're not going to give them free shipping, and we're going to close it off. So you essentially say G5 is greater than 80,000. That's either true or it's false. And watch your commas, watch your double quotes. Put it here and see if anybody got free shipping, and sure enough, several people got free shipping. So that's how that works. And so you can see the percent discount the same way. You can say that if it's equal to or greater than or this, then the average, the sales, the totals, you can come up with numbers for each one of those, a very similar type of logical statement. And you can make up some criteria of what you want to say, what is greater than, what is less than. Question was, is there any way to add a red color code this thing to be red if it meets that text string? And there isn't in the if statement, but you could actually select all of these and go to your conditional format here. And you can simply say if it's equal to, or text that contains. I think you can use either one. Let's try the text that contains. So if you put in the word no, if it contains the word no, then you can turn it red. Go to this text contains and say if that contains the word no, then we can then take the default value, which is format to be red. So that's how you would conditionally format. So it isn't part of the if statement, but it is part of the conditional formatting capabilities. All right. That's kind of the idea of if. You can apply an if statement to different kinds of items like these discounts. And go to your example 2, and here's another example for an if error. And this is an example for some other, looking at this if here. So let me see, this would be, I put procedures in the book that explains each one of these. So if you want to go through each one of these, you can go to the book. And at the bottom of the page here, I go through each one and give you some criteria. Well, here they are here. So this is the one. This is going to be the nested if. This one talks about the or. And so I go through each one of these here, and you can see I'm looking at each sheet. There's example 1, there's example 1, and then I go through different examples here. So I go through each one of them, and I explain, the procedures and how to do that. So if you want to go through and expand upon these other exercises, you can go through and look at the procedures, and you'll see examples in there for each one of those. Okay, so what I want to do now is, let's go back to, we can go back to the bonus, that'd be fine. Now what I want to do is, I'm going to do another logical function. This is a pretty popular one these days. And this deals with large databases and pulling answers out of the database, which is becoming a very popular function. So the SumIF and the CountIF is what we're going to talk about. And there's some real value here because the goal of these is, if you have a large database, you can use these functions to pull answers out of the database. So you don't want to go through and sort it and filter it and all this stuff when you can just simply give me the answer. You can pull things up based on some logical condition or count it based on some logical condition. We're going back to our sheet here, our original sheet. We're going to come down to the below here, and we want to do a sum function. We want to add up all these numbers here, but we only want to add up the numbers that are greater than a certain amount. I only want to add up the numbers that are greater than 20,000. So in this case, it's only going to add up these two numbers. You can give it some criteria, or you can add up the numbers below 20,000, and then it will add up these. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to type equals our SumIF with an open parenthesis. Now, you can look at the criteria in the little help screen here. It simply says the first parameter is going to be the range, and the second parameter is going to be the criteria. So in that case, you would simply say, this is the range I'm looking for. You say comma, and then you say double quote, I'm looking for everything that is greater than 20,000. And then close it. So a lot of people ask me, how come we have to put double quotes around a numerical equation? I don't really have an answer to that. I just know that's how it's designed to work. There are ways you can actually use that as a reference to pull that information in there. Now we're going to do the exact same thing again, but this time we're going to do a count function. Looks like we have a little bit of a, yeah, okay, good. So that totals is up. Equals count if, and the count if works the same way, is you would highlight this information, comma, then you can say if it's double quote greater than 20,000, double quote close, then that's going to give me a number of 2. Now you could actually put this as an input parameter. So I could come over here and type the word 20,000 like this, and then whatever this number is what I can reference to this here. So that way I change this number and then it updates the value. Actually, I probably have to put in here greater than 20,000 like that. That's what you'd have to actually put in there. So in this one here, I can change this greater than 20,000 here to say, I'm just going to reference cells A14. And on this one here, I'm going to delete this here. And I can just reference cells A14 again. And therefore, if I put in here greater than 15,000, now we can do this a different way. Let me go over to the very far side of here, in the very back of this thing, and go to this database. Now, this is where you really start using this function. And I just wanted to kind of show you what the function did and some variations to it. So here I can look at this list. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. I can simply put in my sum and my count here. So I can say equals SumIF, and I can say my range is going to be this list, comma, and I can say it's greater than 50,000. So if it's greater than, double quote, greater than 50,000, double quote, close. Right, so there it is. I can do the count equals CountIF. And I can simply say take the list, numbers, comma, double quote, greater than 1,000. And it will tell me how many items I counted. There's also an average in here. I don't use that much, but several out there. Now this is the basics of using. There's a little bit more to this than what meets the eye. So over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a count. And I can do a count and a sum, but I'm going to say equals CountIF, and I'm going to take these positions of these departments, and I'm going to say I'm looking for a department that is going to be, you don't have to say equal to, you can just simply with the word type the word cells. I'm going to plug in the word cells. It's going to tell me how many people are in the sales department. There's 10. But now what I want to know is the total number of salary associated with the sales department. So in this case, I can say equals SumIF. This is where it becomes really, really powerful. So the first parameter is the range. The second parameter is the criteria. And the third parameter is the sum range. So the first range is going to be my departments, comma, and then we have to put our criteria in, double quote, cells. And then the third parameter says, okay, what do you want to add up? Because we haven't dealt with any numeric numbers yet. So the third parameter says, what do I want to add up? This is going to tell me the total salary, sum of the salary of just the sales department. And this is where it becomes very powerful. Because now you can go to a database and simply say, take this ID or this person's ID and give me some information about that person. Or you can say, give me this department and give me some information about that. Or ask for information about their status. What is the total of all the statuses? and give me some information about that. So you can actually go through and extract information out of the database in whatever you're looking for, whatever parameter you're looking for. And that's going to be dynamic because why every time the database changes, then you're going to get new formulas and new functions. Now you could just put these formulas like right up here on the side of the database over here so they're kind of always calculating and it gives you information about your database. Or you can create another sheet and do it on a different sheet. Call this my summary sheet or something. And you can reference it over the sheet. So either way, you can actually extract information and have it pulling and understanding what's going on in your database as you're pulling that information out. So this SumIF function is a pretty useful function these days. And there are some other related functions that we can talk about. There are some database functions that do very similar type of capability, but a lot of people like these if statements, these SumIFs and CountIFs, because they're pretty easy to use and they're not too complicated and it doesn't cover too much data. The good side is that it takes one slice of data and it gives you the answer for that slice. It can't really look at the whole database. So you're looking at a little piece of information at a time. So that is the idea of what the SumIFs are. I put a whole lot of examples in the book, so if this is something you want to spend some time on, you can go through the book and look at that. And I do encourage you to go back through the book after the class. Pick a time next week or this week that you can go back, go through the book, and walk through the formulas. And don't go through and read all the stuff. Just read the concepts total, the concepts in the front. And those concepts, then, you can read through them. If it's something you remember that you really like or you want to remember, then you can dive into it a little deeper. If you come across a function you're not really that interested in, then just kind of move on and allows you to kind of read through the book and pull out of the book what you really need, what you're interested in, and what you could use. So you might be not interested in financial functions. You might not be interested in some of the math functions. If you are, you can dive into that chapter a little bit more. And it follows the same kind of format that I've gone through in the class in terms of just kind of open this file up and type in these formulas and see what the result is. And that hopefully will help you understand these items. Those are some logical functions. We're going to use these throughout the class.